C-SPAN, powered by cable.
Next, a discussion about the challenges and opportunities of artificial intelligence for small businesses, hosted by the Bipartisan Policy Center.
Can you hear me now? Sorry about that. Technology jumped in and took away my dulcet tones. I'm not sure how much you heard, but I'm a board member at the BPC and a venture capitalist here in Washington, D.C. And we're joined by Bailey DeVries. Bailey is runs the Office of Investment and Innovation at the Small Business Administration. That's the OII, as they call it in SBA lingo. And as you know, in the government, you have to have three-letter acronyms wherever possible. So OII completes that. You just saw some clips from the SBA, or I should say from the BPC, and its observations and its data gathering on the economics of our nation. I've volunteered to be Shai Akabas's agent since he seems to be getting more press than anybody I know. But the key thing about our time today with Bailey DeVries is to talk about not only the SBA and her specific team and teammates, but also about how technology and, again, specifically AI, that term we're all hearing all the time, AI and machine learning, AI and ML, are affecting small business operation. Bailey, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Mark.
Yeah. So let's get started with some housekeeping, so to speak. Tell our viewers what the Office of Investment and Innovation does at the SBA.
Oh, yes. So it is an incredible office, and it is just an honor and privilege to be a temporary steward of this office. Our mission, humbly, is to support ensuring that U.S. Entrepreneurs, small business owners, founders of startups can get access to capital, both long-term equity and debt, to help them start, scale, grow, and sustain incredible businesses that create jobs and improve the U.S. economy more broadly and the human condition more broadly. What is incredibly exciting about our office is it is so much more than just capital. And the capital is incredibly important. What do they say? If you don't have capital, it's hard to do much else. But our office is also responsible for managing and administering the Small Business Innovation Research and Tech Transfer programs. For those that are not familiar with those programs, SBIRs and STTRs, they are programs that we administer and support across 11 participating agencies throughout the federal government that have R&D budgets. And we work with those agencies to be supportive of providing contracts and grants to support prototyping, research, early R&D, and commercialization of cutting-edge technologies. Incredible program that has been in existence for over 40 years and provides $4 billion of non-dilutive funding every single year to support innovation. And last and certainly not least, we run a portfolio of innovation ecosystem support programs. So what does that mean? Well, there are incredible organizations across public and private sector, philanthropy, and corporates that work to provide expertise and support to entrepreneurs that are building innovative companies by running incubators and accelerators. And we work with networks of entrepreneurial support organizations. We provide them with grants and prizes to fund their operations. And we do that through something called the Growth Accelerator Fund Competition, through our federal and state technology partnership program. And also, we recently assumed responsibility for an exciting portfolio called the Regional Innovation Clusters, which will focus on an industry vertical or technology to build expertise in a particular area to support small businesses that are seeking to innovate within those industries. So, like I said, it's a privilege to get to work on so many exciting missions and to be able to have an impact for so many entrepreneurs, and also to support them in building businesses that create so many job opportunities for Americans.
Well, I'm obviously biased since I preceded you by at least one administration, as they used to say, but I think that the programs that the Office of Investment and Innovation runs are bluntly not marketed well enough, because if the common citizen knew the impact of where those funds that are allocated each year through you and your teammates go, and the impact they've had on not just technology or startups, but just businesses we use every single day, I think they would all be amazed and super thankful for the public-private partnership value and energy that OII brings. But from a larger perspective, the SBA has been the center of an unbelievable outpouring of capital during COVID in the various programs like PPP and EIDL, et cetera. Has it calmed down over at HQ a little bit since the COVID furor and all of the outflow of capital to help small businesses across the U.S.?
Excellent question. I'll give you a nuanced answer, though. And Mark, you and I haven't caught up about this, but I'm actually wearing a dual hat right now. I was voluntold, and I am serving, so I was excited to accept the position to act as the acting associate administrator, also for the Office of Capital Access. So, in addition to having the opportunity to be at the helm of the Office of Investment and Innovation, I'm also leading our Capital Access Office, which is responsible for our $140 billion portfolio of working capital loans and asset-based lending, but also all of our disaster lending programs, including PPP and the EIDL programs. What I will share is we're certainly at a different point in that journey. And the incredible thing, and I think this is just a great opportunity, is that the brand awareness of the SBA has never been greater across America. And with that, it presents many opportunities for us to extend our support across our broader portfolio, to be there to meet the needs of small business owners and entrepreneurs that are launching innovative startups across the country.
Wow. So you do have many hats, and that keeps you awesomely busy. I did not know, but congratulations on, or maybe my condolences on adding all of that responsibility. So I know that emergency and disaster funds have been particularly top of the news recently with Maui and other arenas. I'm sure our listeners don't realize how the SBA is so important in some of these disaster recovery efforts. Give us an example of how the SBA has been a real player in folks recovering from disastrous situations like the recent fire in Maui.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and I will admit, I was naive to this before transitioning from the private sector to work at the SBA. We often think of FEMA immediately when there is a national disaster. But the reality is that a large percentage and a greater percentage of financial support actually comes from the SBA. And the SBA provides low-cost loans to homeowners, business owners, to be there to support them as they seek to recover from national disasters. And in addition to supporting them by getting access to capital that they need quickly and many times to recover from these situations, now our teams are boots on the ground to provide technical assistance and support to help them navigate federal programs and local programs and philanthropy. I think it's something that everybody who has worked at the SBA can be incredibly proud of. We take a whole of agency approach in supporting recovery. And we should just acknowledge this is a really challenging and trying time for small business owners and the Americans and their lives that are also affected by these national disasters.
So just to remind our viewers, of which there apparently are a wonderful number, we will have Q&A. So if you have a question for Bailey, be sure to type it in chat, and we'll have a curated presentation of questions that I will present to Bailey a little bit later in our conversation, another 10 or 15 minutes or so. So the idea of the SBA as sadly, in my opinion, again, I'm biased, a hidden partner in so many important things that happen both in business development and disaster relief, as we just discussed. But one of the things that, and I hope I phrase this delicately or in a way that doesn't sound confrontational, not to you, but to the government in general, is sometimes in the government agencies, not so much in the Department of Defense, which often gets the best technology, but the platform for technology and platform for handling data, et cetera, can sometimes be a little bit behind the curve in other government agencies. Now, the SBA, your interaction with small businesses that are often very high growth, you need to be, I would argue, you and your teammates need to be closer to the tip of the spear on where technology is taking small businesses and how they interact with their marketplaces. And of course, artificial intelligence and machine learning are the newest zone here. And in the view of many, it's either Satan, it's going to destroy everything, or it's the visitation of the great Savior who is going to make our lives less drudgery filled, et cetera. What are some ways that either you and your teammates are deploying AI and ML, or you're seeing artificial intelligence and machine learning affecting the small business arena?
Gosh. So first, I certainly wouldn't take your comments to be a criticism, but also just an acknowledgement of the large discrepancies that exist in appropriations between different federal agencies. I think we should all be so grateful that our Defense Department is so well funded. Our national security is paramount to everything else working properly in this country. I will say that I think we are all grateful that Congress moved with speed in with the pandemic and providing funding to support the PPP program. And with that also came administrative funds to support the operations of the agency. And I would applaud, I think we should all applaud Administrator Guzman, who, for those that don't know, she also had previously served as the chief of staff at the agency during the Obama administration. So she knew the inner workings of the agency quite well. So she was able to move swiftly and understood the needs for technology modernization and improvements to ensure that we could effectively get funding out the door rapidly for PPP to make sure that small businesses did not go under and that we were able to save American jobs. So that was a massive investment in technology. She has invested heavily in modernizing the SBA on the technology front. I think we can also all admit, though, that we are the least funded agency with cabinet level representation, yet the SBA has to meet the call, and we're privileged to meet the call of supporting over 33 million small businesses in the U.S., businesses that create over 99% of new jobs every single year in this country. So I could not think of an agency that needs more funding to ensure that we are able to meet those needs. One thing is inevitable. We know that that's change. We know that that's change in technology, that we go through periods where change happens very rapidly. The technology innovation cycle only seems to speed up, which is exciting, but it also presents risks and considerations. And with that, it requires the need to have good governance, good support, good technology systems, and to be able to procure technologies that we need to effectively meet the needs of small businesses, and also to not introduce security risks. Administrator Guzman also has taken many steps to improve cybersecurity at the agency by leveling up the role of our cybersecurity officer within the agency, which is tremendous. Additionally, though, she is incredibly customer-centric and technology-forward in everything that she does, and she thinks about the needs of small businesses in terms of how do we help them with cybersecurity. She actually launched an incredible pilot program to support cybersecurity for small businesses. Last year, it awarded funding to state government partners to work with small businesses in their regions, and just announced more funding and more partners, so that way we can be there to meet their needs. The requirements are high. The complexity continues to grow. And so we have to be there, meet them where they are, understand their needs, and help them gain access to tools. And there's more that we're actually doing there. And I would say one of the things that is just incredibly exciting is the launch of a public-private partnership that we have through the Small Business Digital Alliance, where several large corporations within the innovation economy have partnered with the SBA, Meta, Google, Microsoft, and others to provide small businesses and entrepreneurs with the tools that they might need to be able to start adopting and adapting the use of artificial intelligence tools and technology more broadly, but to do so safely and securely.
So you mentioned Administrator Guzman. I just so you know, I'm the regional president of the Isabel Guzman fan club. And I'm a card-carrying member. And to your point, not to spend too much time on it, but as we both know, her understanding of the wheels of operational execution within the SBA has been, from my perspective, observing as a third party, have been invaluable in just knowing how to both operate the machinery, so to speak, but also to describe the needs of the machinery up on the Hill and in other funding arenas, and then to implement those conversations into improvements. So congratulations to all involved, and particularly to the administrator. But this idea of engaging large tech companies, you named a few of them there, and they're the big ones, in helping provide tool sets and feedback and productive uses of AI and ML. This seems to be the way that the SBA is always led, I think, in public-private partnerships. So I guess the first challenge I would argue that you're facing at the SBA is just the database challenge alone, because you interact with so many customers, so many businesses, so many SBIR grant recipients, et cetera. Just generating the database and tracking of the database, who did what, who received what, how that's turned out, what an SBIC fund is worth, and all that. Has that been part of the challenge that your technology funding has helped address?
So that technology funding was specific to PPP, and that did have many tentacles into different programs. So I think there are broad-based advantages there. However, there are limitations to it, right? And it has restricted uses. And I think, if we lift up and talk about this more broadly, federal government, but also private sector, we've gone through a period of time where we've collected a lot of data and information. I say, the collective we. It's just been what industry's done. It's what government has done. And with that, it's wonderful that there's the information, but it also then begs the question around how can you use that information? How can you use it for the right purposes, to the benefit of small businesses, to the benefit of policy making, to have better programs and better solutions? That is the big challenge. How do you structure the data? How do you use more advanced systems and technology? How do you think about the use of, large language models, large learning models, LLMs, to support adaptive learning and training on the data, so that way we can have better insights, we can move with speed and use technology in the right way. We hear people, some people will talk a lot about fear, and right, we do need to think about security. At the same time, technology will always be changing, right? And so, as they say, you're either leading change or you're responding to it. So we have to think about, how do we lead responsibly? How do we lead where it's not just a few making all the decisions, but that we are thinking broadly about the needs of different stakeholders around how do we remove biases? How do we ensure that we are collecting truth and fact and using that to make informed decisions, and using that information to make informed decisions in all of our programs to support funding, to support technical assistance? There is a big build out in the agency to have a more customer-centric view and more customer-centric support. And so that means connecting the dots broadly across programs, And I think it is very exciting, the potential that that presents for us to be more customer-centric in terms of our delivery. That requires a lot of funding. And that's a different world than we've operated in the past. And it is one that will create many efficiencies if we're able to invest in those improvements and enhancements for the agency. I'll also say, going back to your earlier point around how the agency has traditionally embarked on public-private partnerships with large corporations, and I think that we do that really well. What I would also say that gives me great enthusiasm is the support that we've had broadly from the Hill, from the White House, and also from leadership at the agency and other agencies as well, who we seek to get opinions from, is support for our thinking about the broader ecosystem of stakeholders beyond just large corporations, right? We work with a network of over 1,700 financial intermediaries to provide loans to small businesses. On the investment side, we partner with over 300 private funds. That's a lot of large and small asset management firms that have investors that are there working with entrepreneurs, helping them get access to funding and access to networks. There are all sorts of relationships that we need to grow, and also grow and strengthen our partnerships with agencies that we work with on our innovation programs. I'm really delighted and looking forward to the opportunities and incredible stories that I anticipate we'll see coming out of our recently formed partnership, or I should say growing our partnership with the Defense Department through our relationship with the Office of Strategic Capital, where not only are we going to be working on SBR and STTR opportunities together, but now we are going to be aligning our investment program, the SBIC program, to create opportunities for private funds to work with SBA, to get capital from SBA, but also to get value-add support to the department and the Office of Strategic Capital to help them get access to PhDs and subject matter experts on these technologies that are critical to our national security, to support American investment in technologies such as trusted AI is one example, but also quantum computing, future G, hypersonics, renewable energies. And these are not just things that the Department of Defense is seeking to procure. It is the technologies that we want to build here in the U.S., to have jobs created in the U.S., to support the innovation here in the U.S. So again, we're leading change and not responding to change. And we have leaders across our country, both public and private sector, that are informing how we use these technologies so they are improving the human condition and protecting our country.
So just to remind our viewers, we will have some Q&A. I'll be reflecting some of the questions that folks put in the chat in just a minute, and we have a couple already teed up. But before we get to those, and they're pretty predictable, as you might expect, Bailey, but I'm interested in one of the sort of the biggest worries that you keep hearing around artificial intelligence and machine learning is that it will eradicate a whole chunk of jobs. And I know that jobs and job growth, the SBA has always proudly carried the banner that small businesses are, in fact, the engine of job creation and job maintenance and job growth in the United States, far beyond the mega corporations. So this idea of AI, this sort of, carnivorous ones and zeros engine that'll just, take away all of these jobs that people currently employ. Are there ways that you and your colleagues at the Department of Labor or other agencies are at least paying attention to some of the sectors that may be at most risk as AI is deployed more and more deeply into our society?
Yeah, so, I'd offer the framework. Sometimes it's helpful to think about parallels, right? So if you think about the agricultural revolution, you think about the industrial revolution, you think about just the use of compute power broadly. At different periods of time, this has led to changes in terms of the types of jobs that people have. It would be insensitive to say, oh gosh, this would not lead to any job loss. Throughout history, we've seen that certain types of jobs have been replaced. But consistently, again and again, what we have seen is that as we see technology improvements, if human beings, governments, and corporations make the right choices about the use of technology and how to govern it and to what objective they're using it, it leads to more inclusive equity. It leads to opportunities for people to develop skills, create new companies, create new job opportunities through these advancements. And so that way, through generations, we see new opportunities presented for the next generation that did not exist before. You think about people being on farms and working in the field and then going to work in factories and move to cities and then creating networks in cities that lead to other opportunities. It is a shift, and we will always be evolving and adapting. But the key is that we focus on how we use technology to improve the human condition, which means creating opportunities for purposeful work and economic growth and more inclusive equity in the process.
Well said. And as I used to tell people, shift happens. Important to have that F in there, as one might say. But this idea of job loss, job creation, I think your analogy is spot on. There are many analogies that are parallel to the one you just suggested in the media space, where I spend a lot of my time, radio, going to TV, going to cable, and the VCR. Everything was going to kill the prior media. But in fact, and now over the top and streaming, it generates fresh perspective, fresh opportunity, and often fresh revenue. But one thing that would be actually a question from the crowd, crowdsourcing the question, so to speak, is that AI and ML is a natural source of funding for startups in AI and ML. So there's a whole raft of companies. As a VC, I see this a lot. A whole raft of companies that have sprung up and are either gathering capital or pursuing capital for AI or technology surrounding AI, for LLM management, for machine learning. How are some of these startups, what are some, it should be an easy question, I hope. What are some ways that these startups can approach the SBA for funding?
Yeah. So if I have my statistics right, and I may have changed recently because a lot of money has gone into the space, but I believe just in the first half of this year, over $40 billion went into funding VC-backed companies in artificial intelligence, right? And so, and you think about ChatGPT, and it was initially, $1 billion of funding. So we have a massive amount of funding going into this space. And I'd also say, in many ways, think about this like the changes that we've seen in terms of the use of computer software and the growth in just, SaaS, software as a service model. So there's so many different applications. And some of these companies are going to be focused on very discrete issues, very discrete markets. Some are going to be looking at, broader opportunities and applications. I'll go back actually to when I'm answering your question about ways that they might get funding from SBA, and actually talk a little bit more about our partnership with the Defense Department under the SBIC Critical Technologies Initiative. So trusted AI is one of the 14 critical technology areas called out in this initiative. And I think what is really compelling is due to several regulatory reforms that we advanced in the SBIC program, reforms to ensure that SBA could effectively provide matching capital to VC funds. So we provide a loan to a fund to match private capital that's invested in the fund. Since it's a loan, we don't take any profits, which can make the return profile more compelling. There will be opportunities for funds that are focused in this area to apply for licenses under the SBIC CT initiative and not only get funding from us, which could provide downside protection to their fund and improve the return profile, but they'd get value-add support through the relationship with the Defense Department and access to subject matter experts and PhDs in the department that are focused on trusted AI. And so I think that's really just an elegant and exciting solution that we are seeking to advance for businesses that are getting funding from VCs in this area. And so it's just a broad partnership with lots of stakeholders. But that way, the VCs and the companies can have connectivity into the federal government and the Defense Department to understand the ways that we're thinking about advancing these technologies and objectives and use cases, which is really exciting. Beyond that, many of these companies, in addition to taking equity funding from venture capital funds, often take venture debt, right? We have seen that market experience some major challenges since the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and some of the other primary venture lenders over this past spring and summer. What is exciting is that Administrator Guzman noticed some interesting patterns with PPP, right? So what did she notice? And what did we hear from industry and from both sides of the aisle as well? What we heard is that it was wonderful that these emergency funds were able to get out to many small businesses, but we were leaving behind the innovation economy, small businesses and startups, because of a long-standing regulation related to affiliation and control that considered, even though you were a small business, if you had taken on equity funding from a private fund, you were not eligible to get funding. You had to have bootstrapped the business and be able to self-fund it in order to get funds from the SBA. Can we just say, that's great for those businesses, but what if you were not independently wealthy? What if you had to go and seek funding in the form of equity to get your business launched because you didn't have a bank account large enough to support employing people and growing that business and buying the tech? It seems a shame that we would not provide federal loans to those businesses. And so many thanks to the industry associations and the Hill that spoke up and said we need to figure out a way to make sure these companies don't go under. These companies are driving innovation, and which creates the vast majority of jobs in the U.S., new jobs. And so an exemption was put in place so those businesses could get access to PPP loans. In this past spring, learning from that, we advanced regulatory reforms to remove the same restriction on affiliation and control in our 7A working capital loan program and our 504 loan program, our asset-based loan program. Why does that matter? Why does it matter? It matters a great deal now because startups and innovation economy businesses do not have the same level of access to loans after the collapse of many of the venture lenders. The opportunity for those businesses now to get a low-cost government-guaranteed loan from a wide network of lenders in communities and regions and nationally could be transformative, absolutely transformative, particularly in a rising interest rate environment.
So as Ambassador Rahm Emanuel famously once said, never let a good crisis go to waste. And I think it's tragic, but it's certainly, to your examples, that COVID unveiled or sort of revealed some of the handcuffs that, for whatever reason they were originally put in, probably made sense at the time, but those had handcuffed, to your examples, handcuffed the flow of capital to folks that needed it for the reasons that made sense at the time. We have a few minutes left, Bailey, and I was going to read a question that just came across that I think is of particular interest to many on our call today. The questioner says, are there any concerns about the risks AI might pose to minority-owned businesses or their communities that might make them hesitant to adopt AI technologies that could prove beneficial? If so, what policy measures, if any, do you think might help support those business owners with AI adoption?
Yeah. So it's an excellent question in that with changes in technology broadly and with with AI, right? The key is that we have to figure out how to advance the technology responsibly. So the objectives are clear, that it is not benefiting a few, that we are considering the needs of communities and stakeholders broadly, that biases are not built into systems. It's incredibly important that we figure out a governance framework, so that way there can be trust. Because if there is trust and if there's an understanding of the framework and the objectives, and that the needs and opinions of a broad base of stakeholders are considered, we will be able to advance the technology for the greater good of humankind. And this level of coordination is so necessary and critical. What we do not want to see is the technology in the hands of a few, making decisions for all, right? We need to figure out how to democratize these tools broadly and responsibly to benefit communities and different industries. I am really optimistic about the way that the administration broadly is thinking about this and how we are engaging, and a focus on building trust and responsible development, and also the moves that Administrator Guzman has made through our Small Business Digital Alliance partnerships, and also through our network of partners, to make sure that we're providing the resources and tools to communities broadly and not just in a subset of markets.
So my last question is not a gotcha question, and it's kind of a lightning round, but it's an unfair one. I'll warn you right now, it's an unfair one.
Okay.
But one of the things about AI that is most compelling in many ways is pattern recognition, taking large amounts of data and obviously reaching some conclusions through the patterns that the software can conclude. And obviously you and your colleagues deploy lots of capital to different types of businesses in different places and different arenas, different silos of business, different types of ownership structures. And at some point, I'm sure somebody will say to you, well, why don't you use AI to figure out what kinds of businesses do best in what geographies and what ownership structures, almost as in a predictive way, like a venture capitalist is supposed to do when they deploy the capital from their limited partners. Is that on the horizon, or are you going to have to, or will you remain effectively above the conclusive fray of deciding what types of businesses get capital from the SBA?
So, right, it's a moral and ethical question, as well as a question of the bounds of technology today and technology in the future. Some folks that are listening in might know this term, that they talk a lot with AI about the fact that we've got an alignment problem, right?
Yeah.
That unlike when you're using structured data only and you're doing rules-based development with large data sets and the use of neural networks, you don't know necessarily how certain conclusions were reached by AI. You have information revealed to you. There is a need, and I don't see the need going away anytime soon, for human judgment, human ethics, morality, and principles. Data is interesting to analyze and inform. Just because we get certain information fed to us doesn't mean it is right. We should consider information, but we also need to check facts, and we need to layer in human intelligence. AI is not at the level of human intelligence. What do they say? That ChatGPT-2 was like the size of a bee's brain, and ChatGPT-4 is a squirrel's brain, and we're nowhere near the potential of the human brain yet. So I don't know about you, but I don't want a squirrel making all of our decisions.
Well said, Bailey DeVries. It's been an honor to have you with us. Bailey DeVries runs the Office of Investment and Innovation, amongst many other offices at the SBA. Bailey, we've really enjoyed our conversation today, and on behalf of the Bipartisan Policy Center, I want to thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Mark. And I want to say it is a privilege having the baton passed from you and a number of other leaders in the seat to me. We're stewards for a short period of time of this great mission that was started for OII during the Eisenhower administration to ensure that capital and support were going to innovative small businesses and small businesses broadly across the country to make sure that they could grow and create jobs. So thank you for all you did before I was in this seat. I'm only able to do what I'm doing because of great leaders before me. So thank you.